Hello friends, I, Dr. Shikhar Verma from Medicogyan has collaborated with Medical Dialogues. We are starting series of video diagnosis by symptoms, in which we shall be approaching to the diagnosis on the basis of the symptoms. In this regard, our first video is Approach to Shock. Here in this video, we will be learning what is shock, various symptoms and signs of shock, and how do you classify shock on the basis of etiology, and how do you make your diagnosis on the basis of physical history, general and cardiopulmonary examination. So friends, let's go and enhance our knowledge about the subject.
Hello guys, today in this video we shall be discussing about what is a clinical approach to the patient suffering from shock. But before going into the diagnostic framework of shock, we should have a basic understanding of what is shock. So what is shock? It is a pathophysiological condition characterized by systemic impairment in oxygen delivery as a result of reduced tissue perfusion, almost universally mediated by low blood pressure. Now, what are the various signs which indicates that the patient is suffering from shock? So basically in shock, what happens is there is low blood pressure which causes decrease in the tissue perfusion, and as a result there is systemic impairment in oxygen delivery. So the first sign will be low BP, the second sign is tachycardia, there can be tachypnea, there is hypoxemia as a result of decreased oxygen delivery, there are weak peripheral pulses, there is altered mental status, the extremities are cool, there is peripheral cyanosis, and there is increase in the lactate and creatinine level, and lastly there will be low urine output. So these are the various signs in patients suffering from shock. Now before going further, we should be aware of the fact that the shock can be classified into four main types, and these are classified on the basis of their etiologies. So there are basically four types of shock which are classified on the basis of their etiologies. It can be hypovolemic shock, distributive shock, cardiogenic shock, and obstructive shock. Hypovolemic shock can occur due to hemorrhage, or it can occur due to non-hemorrhagic conditions. Distributive shock mostly occur due to sepsis, in which there is a severe infection leading to the cytokine-mediated inflammatory response. This is by far the most common reason of distributive shock. It can occur due to anaphylaxis, which can occur due to certain food particles, medication, or animal product. It can also occur due to spinal cord injury, and because of the spinal cord injury, there is a loss of the vasomotor tone leading to intense vasodilation. This is also known as neurogenic shock. In cardiogenic shock, there will be decrease in the cardiac contractility leading to the decrease in the tissue perfusion and shock. Acute MI is one of the most common reasons of cardiogenic shock. It can also occur due to exacerbation of the severe heart failure, and it can also occur due to certain arrhythmias such as ventricular tachycardia, ventricular fibrillation, and complete heart block, in which there is a decrease in the blood pressure leading to the decrease in the tissue perfusion and shock-like condition develops. The obstructive shock can occur due to massive pulmonary embolism, pericardial tamponade, in which there is a fluid or blood connection in the pericardial space leading to the impaired diastolic filling of the heart. It can also occur due to tension pneumothorax. In tension pneumothorax, there is a massive pneumothorax which causes shifting of the heart and the mediastinum to the opposite side, leading to the impaired venous return. So basically the shock can be classified into the four types on the basis of etiology. Now, after having discussed the various types of the shock, we should also study about what are the various things which helps in the diagnosis. History plays a very important role which helps in the diagnosis of the various types of the shock. We can ask the patient about the history of bleeding, sign of dehydration, symptoms of any infection, any chest pain, whether the patient is having or not, history of cardiac disease or certain malignancy should also be ruled out. This malignancy can make the patient prone for obstructive shock. The vitals also plays a very important role in the clinical aid in diagnosis. Physical examination should also be carried out, in which cardiac and pulmonary examination plays a very important role. Assessment of JVP is very important in patient of cardiogenic shock. Sign of abdominal tenderness or rigidity plays a very important role to rule out intra-abdominal source of infection or intraperitoneal bleeding. Extremity examination should also be done to see whether the extremities are cold or not, to look for the sign of edema. And after extremity examination, passive leg raising should be done, in which the leg are raised after 45 degree and the assessment of the pulse pressure is done. If the pulse pressure is increased after passive leg raising, it is a sign of intravascular volume depletion. It plays a very important role in patient of hypovolemic shock. Bedside ultrasound is also very helpful nowadays to determine the cause of the shock. We should see the size of inferior vena cava and the collapsibility of the IVC. The overall left ventricular function should also be assessed, whether it is hyperdynamic or not. The presence of pericardial effusion also plays a very important role in bedside ultrasonography, which helps in diagnosis of obstructive shock in case of cardiac tamponade. Certain lab tests should also be done, which are suppository in diagnosis of these shock-like conditions. CBC to rule out sepsis, presence of high BNP, which is a marker of heart failure. Serial troponin level should be done, which are or on the higher side after acute MI. Arterial blood gas parameter should also be done and should be measured 2 to 4 hourly. ECG should be done to look for any heart block, arrhythmias, and sign of ischemic changes after acute chest pain. Chest X-ray can also be done to look for sign of pericardial effusion or pneumothorax. So friends, now we shall be discussing about hypovolemic shock. What happens in hypovolemic shock is the JVP will be low. The extremities will be cold because of the decrease in the peripheral circulation, leading to cold extremities. On passive leg raising, that is by raising the leg 45 degree, there will be increase in the pulse pressure. On bedside ultrasonography, the IVC will be seen non-dilated and collapsing with respiration. On bedside ultrasound, the left ventricular function will be hyperdynamic, so there will be hyperdynamic left ventricular function in cases of hypovolemic shock. And on history, there will be history of bleeding or dehydration. So this was all about hypovolemic shock. Now, after having discussed the hypovolemic shock, let's go into distributive shock. By far, the most common reason of distributive shock is sepsis, and therefore the JVP will be low. The extremities will be warm because of intense vasodilation. On passive leg raising, there will be increase in the pulse pressure, like the hypovolemic shock, because of intravascular volume depletion, which also occurs in cases of distributive shock. On bedside ultrasonography, the IVC will be non-dilated and collapsing with respiration. So the IVC will be non-dilated and collapsing with respiration. And there will be hyperdynamic left ventricular function on echocardiography. There will be history of fever, and on blood analysis, the TLC count can be low, less than 4,000, or it can be more than 11,000, which indicates sepsis. There can also be focal opacities in the chest X-ray. All these points out to the source of sepsis. So friends, this was all about distributive shock. Now, after having discussed the hypovolemic shock and distributive shock, let's study the cardiogenic shock. In cardiogenic shock, the JVP will be high, the extremities will be cold, and there will be no effect of passive leg raising on the pulse pressure. On bedside ultrasonography, the IVC seems to be dilated and non-collapsing with respiration. And because of the cardiogenic condition, there will be decrease in the left ventricular function on bedside ultrasonography. On history, there will be history of cardiac disease, chest pain, or certain risk factor such as diabetes, hypertension, lipid disorder. S3 on examination is not so sensitive but highly specific for cardiogenic shock. There will be increase in the BNP, which is a marker of heart failure. There can be increase in the troponin level, which can be increased after acute MI. So friends, if these are present in the history and clinical examination, it may point out to the cardiogenic shock. Now let's study about obstructive shock, in which the JVP will be low, the extremities will be cold, there will be no effect of passive leg raising on the pulse pressure, the IVC will be dilated and non-collapsing with the respiration, and there will be normal left ventricular function on echocardiography. So basically this is exactly like the cardiogenic shock, but on echocardiography the LV function will be normal. History of malignancy or DVT risk factor may be there. There can be possible risk of cardiac tamponade, which causes decrease in the diastolic filling of the heart. There can be tension pneumothorax, which can be clinically determined by decrease in the air entry unilaterally and decrease in the expansion of the chest on one side. So this was all about obstructive shock.
Never miss a medical update from Medical Dialogues. Like, subscribe, and press the bell icon.